So today, our guest is writer, podcaster, communicator, and campaigner. He was Tony Blair's press secretary and director of communications, but is probably best known for playing football with Maradona and the bagpipes with Ackerbilk. It's Alastair Campbell.
How are you?
I'm very
God,
well. How are you?
I'm fine. God, I forgot about Ackerbilk. Yeah,
I take it he
that
wasn't playing
was
the bagpipes
no. He was on the sax, I think.
on the sax, right? Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Where
That
was
was a
that?
long time ago. That was at Cambridge. That
Okay.
was a university. He was doing it. He was playing at May Ball and got the bagpipes out. Yeah.
Well, it's slightly surreal to have you on the podcast, Alistair, and I don't know whether we should talk about how you came to be here or just crack
Well, I
on.
think you should. I think you should tell your listeners because it shows your boldness.
Well, thank you. Yes. Well, I was at a commercial conference in my day job when I work for a construction firm. I was at a commercial conference down in London, flew down from Glasgow, and you were the guest speaker at the end of the day and did a very entertaining hour or so. And at the end, there was a Q&A. And I remember, I don't know whether I need to believe this out or not, but there wasn't seemingly many hands going up. And I said to my boss who was sat next to me, "Oh, fuck it." And I stuck my hand up and said, "Alistair, it was very entertaining. And I listen to your podcast, a big fan of your podcast. And I know you're an advocate for mental health and wondered if you come on my podcast or our podcast, being Paul's not here today, Mind Cake, and just talk about mental health." And I saw your kind of shoulders slump because I can imagine you get asked to open
I
fates
do
and a lot of things.
stuff.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And I remember well, it's not really very fair that you asked me in front of 200 people. It's very difficult for me to say no. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly why I've asked you, Alistair.
Yeah,
Well,
actually, no, you were more impressed than that. There were a few hands. I think you were the first question I called because it was in that moment where people are thinking, "Oh, will I ask? Will I won't?" And I'd spotted you before, and I don't know whether I think sometimes I'm quite good at spotting people who might have a bit going on up top.
oh, thank you.
So I spotted you, and so I asked you, and then you said that during my speech, I talked about the importance of being bold and being
Yes.
ambitious and aiming for the really difficult things. So you sort of said, well, if I kind of contacted you out of the blue, you'd probably just fob me off. But I'm here now, so I'm going to be bold. I'm going to ask you will you come on my podcast? And as you rightly said, I said, well, it's very difficult not to say yes to that. So here we are.
I was channeling my inner Maradona and
Yeah.
visualizing victory.
Oh, I love talking about Maradona.
Do you want to tell that story?
I can do. I can do if you want me to.
Yeah, yeah. Why not?
Yeah. So what are you? I'm now 67, nearly 67. So when I was 49, 18 years ago, I was asked to play in the first socceraid
That's right.
at Old Trafford, and Maradona was on my team. And on the morning of the game, when I was picked, I was going to be in the starting
I was going to
lineup.
say
I
you're in the
couldn't quite
starting
believe
11. Yeah.
that. And Maradona playing alongside me, and I couldn't sleep. I just could not sleep. So I got up. I went for a walk around the hotel, sort of just killing time, and got back to the hotel. And the only other player who was up was Maradona, because he couldn't sleep either. He was jet lagged. And anyway, he said that he wanted to go and have a kickabout.
As you
He
do.
hadn't kicked. He said he hadn't kicked a ball for a week, and any chance. It was only about 6 in the morning.
Right.
So could we go up to Old Trafford and have a kickabout? So we got in a car, went up to Old Trafford, and there was a sort of Jobsworth groundsman who said, no, well, the ground's not properly open, you can't get in, and the pitch hasn't been mown, and we're going like, it's Diego Maradona, for God's sake. Anyway, so eventually let us in, but only me and him on the pitch. That was he said, well, only Maradona and Alastair on the pitch, that's it. And it was just amazing. So yeah, I had 40 odd minutes just knocking the ball about with him.
Wow.
And the visualize the victory thing that you mentioned was when he scored a goal. Just when I say he scored a goal, he smashed the ball into the net at one point, and then ran around the pitch celebrating the goal in
the empty stadium.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I said to him after, what was that about? And he says, victory. There you go.
There you
We
go.
lost.
You
Well,
lost. That was the very
yeah.
first one.
That was the first one. Yeah,
Mm.
yeah, yeah.
I
Then I
think I've
played in the second one, and then I got dropped.
right. Okay. You any good at football?
Nah,
No.
nah. I'm good at reading football. I'm good at watching football.
Hmm.
I've got quite a good footballing mind, I think. But no, I'm not very good. I was never that good.
I've got a
No.
footballing question for you later on, actually, but we'll do that at the end.
Okay.
Um, okay. So for those who don't know, I think a lot of you know your public persona, but for those who don't know, Alastair, amongst other things, has written books on mental health. You're a global ambassador for Australians for Mental Health. You co-founded the all-party campaign Equality for Mental Health, and
We need that again.
Well, this is what I was going to come on to, because you've made documentaries about your own breakdown, and a further BBC documentary, My Depression and Me, in 2019. And I just wonder, looking back now, what do you think made you interested, firstly, in mental health in the first place?
I think I've always been interested in it. I can remember when I was quite young being on holiday in the Hebrides with my family, and there was somebody who lived opposite one of my uncle's crofts, and he was being sectioned. Guy called Stanley, I'll never forget it. Sydney, and so I would have been like 8 or something, and I remember just being fascinated about it. There were police there, there was an ambulance there. It was all just quite dramatic, and yet everybody else standing back and watching. And then my first real personal experience of mental health, mental illness, was when my brother was diagnosed with schizophrenia when he was in the army, and that was like a massive shock for the whole family. So that sort of generated a real interest. I actually stayed with him in hospital. Well, he was in hospital, and I was sort of stayed in the area after he'd been first taken to hospital, and I think I was just interested in talking to the other patients, and that was a military psychiatric hospital because he was in the Scots Guards. So that was a sort of, I think, provoked another load of interest, if you like. And then I had my own I had my own issues. I had a breakdown in the 80s. And then I think that what happened with all the campaigning and the documentaries and the books was really just that I felt, after I left government, I felt a lot of the skills that I had in terms of writing, communicating, strategy, that I could apply them to this mental health world, this field, if you like, this space. In particular, trying to break down the stigma and the taboo. So it's always been there. And I think one of the points I'm trying to get across to people in government, people in the public, people in business, employers, is that we've got to think about mental health as something that we all have.
Yeah.
We're not all mentally ill, but we all have mental health. So I've always been interested in it. But I'd say they're the main things that really kind of, fuel the interest, personal and political, really.
I mean, one of the questions I was going to ask is, I saw you give a talk at Oxford University 10 years ago about mental health being the last great taboo. And I just wondered whether you thought things have actually improved in the last 10 years.
I think things have improved in terms of attitudes. And I think they've improved in terms of awareness, but I don't think they've improved substantially in terms of services. I think, if anything, we're going back. And I worry that at the moment, I think we've got to, at least David Cameron, Theresa May sort of talked the talk. They talked about mental health being important. They talked about the need to have genuine parity between mental and physical health. I actually think this lot are taking it backwards.
Yeah.
Sunak's recent speech, the so-called sick note culture, it was kind of classic populism for me. It was exploiting a problem rather than addressing it.
Well, that was one of the things I was going to mention, because he's pledging to strip GPs of their power to sign people off work as part of a plan to tackle the sick note. Well, if GPs aren't qualified to sign people off work, then who is? And what sort of a message is that sending out when the government is saying the UK is a sick note culture? So I agree with you that in a lot of ways, attitudes of, and I don't know whether to talk about some of my own experiences about that, but it was quite interesting the other day. I'm going off at a tangent, and yeah, I do that quite a lot. But one
Yeah.
of the things I was going to say was that I was diagnosed with cancer in September 2020 and was given 6 months to live. And as a result of that, my mental health, I had mental health issues because you're coming out the other side of something that you go, well, what the hell was that all about? But me and my wife had a conversation recently whereby she said, but I think, you've always had depressive episodes ever since I've known you. And I remember even in middle school, but it's almost, again, you're saying about this taboo, it's almost like the cancer has validated, because I can say now, well, I have mental, it's almost given me an excuse, if you like. I know this, I'm not articulating this very well, but it's almost given me an excuse to talk about my mental health, because I go, well, of course you've got mental health problems. You were diagnosed with cancer, given 6 months to live. Whereas previous to that, I wouldn't be doing a podcast about mental health. I wouldn't be necessarily talking about mental health, because I think you say in one of your books that it's easier to talk about cancer. Like you say, the big C was not that long ago, but now we openly talk about cancer.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure. I almost needed the cancer as a vehicle or as an excuse to talk about my mental health.
I completely understand that. I think that I think I said at the event that we met that we used to talk about the big C rather than cancer, because you usually apply labels to things when you don't want to say what it is. And if you don't want to say what it is, it's because you don't want to confront what it means. And I think with mental health, I think it's still a taboo for a lot of people, but it's better than it was. But my worry in relation to the role of government and the health service is that stripping away the ignorance and the taboo, that has maybe made more people feel, I should be open about it. I should go and try and talk to somebody. But then if they go and find there's nobody to talk to, there's no services, there's nobody they can find to connect to, then I sometimes worry we're making things worse for some people. But I think we've got to keep going. I think eventually, I mean, I really obviously hope there'll be a change of government, but I think it's going to take more than that. I think it's going to take a change of attitudes right across the piece for people to understand that we need to get to a more preventative approach to mental health and well-being. And it goes back to this point that we've all got mental health. So, we all know, I'll give you an example. So like, recently I had because I'm 66 now and I got the old, you're covered by the bowel cancer screening program. Please provide a sample, do that. Turns out they want to see me. Turns out I've got 4 polyps inside my bowel. They take them out. They take them out. Now, that's preventative medicine.
It's 50 in Scotland.
Is it?
Bowel
that's
cancers,
right. That's right.
Yeah.
I think he might be 50 now, yeah. It started at 60 and I think it's coming lower.
Right, okay.
So anyway, but that's preventative medicine.
Yeah.
That's me. They actually said to me, if these things had been allowed to stay in there, it's possible they could have grown into cancerous polyps. So what would that look like in relation to mental health? It would look like us understanding that if somebody has a mild episode, that is the time to try to get to the bottom of why they've had it. Not to sort of say, oh, well, it's not as bad as it might be. Lots of people are worse off and all the other stuff that we do, because we don't like to confront the fact that we might be ill, our family members might be ill, our colleagues might be ill. When it comes to mental illness, we like to think it's just going to get better on its own. Now, sometimes it does, but often it doesn't.
No, and I think, like, say, going back to my own experience, I remember being in the playground at junior school was probably the earliest memory I have of having the, in inverted commas, feeling. And remember thinking, well, I can't wait to be grown up, because when I'm 18, I'll know how to deal with this shit. And of course I didn't. And I think, like you're saying about the more people, the more open we are about it, the more people come forward. But then I don't know, I haven't got statistics, but I would think that if you went to your GP now and said, I think I need some counselling or some help, I dread to think what the wait would be.
Oh, horrific. Horrific.
And like you say, so
and worse than that, and also child and adolescent mental health services are just in absolute crisis in most parts of the country.
yeah,
So, no, I think that is the problem, is that we don't have the. I think if you or I climbed on top of a building today
mm-hmm.
and jumped off it and we survived, right? The chances are they'd find us a bed, they'd probably find us somebody to talk to,
yeah,
etc.
mm-hmm.
But that's what I mean about we have a mental health crisis service, not a mental health service.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's what we've got to get to a mental health, or even a service, because the best. I actually feel for myself that since I've sort of done a lot, mentioned the book the last book that I wrote about mental health, Living Better. I write a lot in there about the work I did with a psychiatrist who sadly passed away since, but also the things that I've done for myself for me to look after myself better. And I think as a result of that, I'm saving the health service money, because I'm better than I'm a lot. I still get depression, but I've learned how better to deal with it through some of the things that I do, and that's been that I think has been as I say, I'm in my 60s. It's taken me a long time to get to there, but having got there, I feel I'm better off. Hopefully, it means my family's feeling better about things, and but also I'm not as big a drain on the health service as probably I was.
Well, I think one of the things you talk about as well, and you mentioned it at the speech that you gave when I saw you a couple of weeks ago, was your scale, 1 to 10 scale. Do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So really, what it is that very, very briefly when I wake up or when I'm brushing my teeth, I'll just sort of say to myself, right, where are you on the scale? And 1 is a level of delirium and happiness that doesn't exist. Okay. And 10 is suicide. So they're the 2 extremes of the scale. And I like to be sort of 3-4. 3-4 is where I feel happy, I feel positive, I feel really energetic. I've got things to do that I want to do. I'm happy in my main relationship. The kids are doing okay. That's where I like to be. But I can't decide what I'm going to be, because when I wake up, some days I don't feel like that. Some days I feel terrible. And the reason I use the scale so is that if I wake up and I'm 7, that's bad. That means I'm depressed, and I'm not chronically depressed, but it means I'm not in good shape. And as long as I'm 7, once I get to 9, I can barely get out of bed. But if I'm at 7, I can say to myself, right, that's where you are. From experience, there are things that you can do that will help push you up. So that might be, I don't feel like exercising, but I'll make myself exercise. I don't feel like talking, but I'll phone up a couple of people and talk to them, and maybe say to them, I'm really struggling. I'll listen to music rather than watch the news. I'll read a book rather than read the newspapers. I will do things that historically I know have helped me. I won't drink. I'll drink lots of water. I'll eat well rather than eat shit. Just little things that I know. And as I do them through the day, it doesn't always work, but as I do them through the day, as I tick them off, there's something kicks in that says, well, this helped before, so it'll probably help again now. And then before I know it, I'm up at 5. And if I'm up at 5, I'm thinking, oh, I've made progress. I've done well today. And then I might go to bed, and the next morning I wake up and I'm back at 3 and 4. It doesn't always work, but I've used it a lot now, and it's helped.
Do you think your younger self would roll their eyes at this? I just think of some of the things that I do now, i.e. I'll go for a cold shower, I'll maybe go for a run, I'll maybe try and drink kombucha or whatever it is to try and I can almost see in the back of my head my younger self going, what the hell are you doing?
I haven't really thought about that. I don't care really. I mean, my younger self, exists in the past, and probably would have done that. But then at the same time, as you were asking that question, I was remembering, as a part of my younger self, I can remember a relative of ours. I can remember when my mother, whenever she came to stay, my mother would always say, remember not to make too much noise around the place because she has a lot of trouble with her nerves. I remember that.
Right.
And you know what I've learned subsequently is that she had bad depression and
Uh-huh.
anxiety.
Uh-huh.
Well, I'd like to think that my younger self, had I known that she had depression and anxiety, that I would know what that meant and try to help in some way.
Yeah.
Or at least to understand how to be and how not to be around her.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I'm sure my younger self would have gone, hippy dippy bullshit. And for some people it will be hippy dippy.
Yeah.
But to me, I have found things that work for me.
Yeah. I think that's what we try and say on the podcast, is that some things that work for some people don't necessarily work for other people. And I think this is part of why I'm doing the podcast, is that people have come to, I've seen things that I've posted online about my own sort of journey over the last 3.5 years, and have come to me and said, what you've been through with a young family and what have you, and radioactive iodine treatment and operations, that they found that quite inspirational. Now, I don't see that inspirational, because I think you've just got to, if you're put in that position, you just kind of need to do what you need to do. But part of the reason why I've done it is that because people are coming to me going, I'm suffering with my mental health. Have you got any tips to help me? And I'm like, I hear their stories, and I'm like, Jesus Christ, what you've been through is like, if you put that in a sitcom or in a EastEnders, you'd be like, well, that's a bit far-fetched. But you're asking me for my advice, and like I say, we're all in this together. And that's the main reason we're doing the podcast, is we're all in this together. And if we can reach a handful of people that it helps, and we're exploring different ways that you can maybe, try and coping mechanisms and whatever, and talking to people like yourself about their stories. I just think that's, just trying different things and then finding out what works for you.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
No, and I get so when did I write Living Better? It was 2 or 3 years ago now. But I'm still getting letters from people saying, this helped me, that helped me. I've had letters from people saying, I had a letter not long ago, an email from somebody who said that, their dad had given them the book, and it had sat on their bedside for ages. And actually one day this guy said he just killed himself. And he worked out how he was going to do it. He's worked out where he was going to do it. And he didn't know why, but something made him pick up the book. And he read the book, and he said he read it in a couple of sittings. And he's, and he said, look, it saved my life. It stopped me doing what I was going to do.
Which is massive.
Yeah, it's great. And I've not met the guy. I don't know him. Hopefully one day I will. But and you get loads of sort of feedback like that of people who are saying, that thing you said about. I mean, I've got this thing about stress. When I feel real stress coming on, I do this thing with and a number of people I've said that to, and then they said, "Oh, I do that now," and I find it really helps.
Yeah.
I don't know why it helps me, but it does, and I don't know why it helps them. So and I think sharing those things, and the thing about when you're feeling stressed, listen to music, not the news. I mean, if you're not into music, that probably means nothing, but to somebody who's into music and understands the kind of power it can have when you're feeling low. Sometimes to make you feel worse, but sometimes to make you feel better.
Then am I right in saying that you love a good national anthem?
Well, I like a good national anthem. There's a lot of bad national anthems. No, yeah, I like my favourite national anthems. French is pretty good. I play quite a lot of them on the bagpipes.
I was going to say, yeah. I saw you. What was that thing that you? So you recently in Athens. I saw on Instagram. What was that thing you were playing?
It was like a homemade bagpipe that guy.
Is that what it was?
Goat skin.
Right.
Yeah, amazing. I didn't play it very well. I'll tell you what, it's really funny as well. I posted a picture, and the chant of it, where you do the the fingering where the notes come.
Yeah.
And the chanters, the guy, it was all homemade. Everything was homemade. And so anyway, I posted a picture of this chanter thing, and one of my followers on social media, asked one of these artificial intelligence tools what it was, and it came back, said it looks like a homemade weapon. or self-defense tool. So that, you know, AI may be clever, but it's not as clever as it's not as clever as music.
No.
Yeah, no, I don't. I mean, it's just that so I can play obviously Fly Scotland. I can play the Welsh national anthem. I can play the Ukrainian national anthem.
Okay.
I've got not bad on the Irish. Yeah, it's not I love a national anthem, but you know the
rousing.
Yeah, they can be. I mean, some of them are terrible.
Some of them are bilge.
Let's be honest. Our own is not the best, is it?
No.
It doesn't get your heart soaring.
Not really. No. I was going to touch on obviously your scale of 10 suicide.
Yeah.
And I think something that was pertinent to me sitting, like say, in this construction field, I was looking at some statistics, and the World Health Organization is saying over 700,000 people take their own lives each year. The Office for National Statistics, 115 people die in the UK each week. 6,000 people a year. 75% of them are men. And I'm just looking. So I did a suicide prevention workshop not so long with work, and like it's saying construction, you're 4 times more likely to die by suicide than any other sector. In 2021, 507 construction workers took their own lives, and 502 of those were men. And I don't know whether, obviously, it's a male-dominated sector, but I just wonder. I wonder whether politics is similar, where you've got the same pressures, and I know things are changing as they are in construction, but again, mainly male-dominated.
I mean, the stats on construction are pretty well known, and it's been a pretty troubled sector for a long time. I think that, look, as you say, it is male-dominated. I think the other issue is that it's a bit like with vets and farmers, and they've got the means. So with vets, it would be the medication. With farmers, it'd be guns, and likewise in the construction industry. You're often in a naturally dangerous environment where it is easier than in a benign environment to end your life. I think the thing about men is interesting, and there's an assumption that the reason is that women are much more open and much more prone to vent and to say how they're feeling and so forth. And, I imagine that's part of the case, but I suspect there's something else going on that we don't necessarily fully understand. And I think in politics, it's funny enough, just before we started the call, I was reading a German newspaper this morning, and there was a huge piece about how much an increase in violence in German politics against German politicians.
Oh, really?
Literally being attacked in the street. I mean, the numbers are relatively low, but there's been a big increase, and so this kind of hatred is becoming normalized, which does make politics, I think, a lot harder than it used to be. And the other thing I'd say, I think I said this in Living Better, you can argue that politics in many ways it's a laboratory for mental ill health in many ways. You're often away from home.
Yeah.
The pressures are pretty relentless. You're constantly being judged, which most people don't like.
Yeah.
You're constantly, particularly now with social media, you're constantly being abused if you've got a high profile. You feel that you're within families. I think it's difficult. I mean, I've got my own experience of this, where you're so committed to your politics and your work that you're constantly feeling that you're not quite the parent or the partner that you should be, and maybe your kids and your partner's feeling that as well.
Yeah.
And added to which, you're in an environment where, particularly for elected politicians, I mean, even though most of them have got absolutely no chance of getting to the top, most of them think they could.
Yeah.
And they're sort of, they're in this kind of zoo-like atmosphere the whole time of who's up, who's down, and mistakes get exaggerated, and your successes don't get celebrated. So it's not a great place for mental health and well-being. And added to which, I mean, it's changing now because the hours are changing. But I think the alcohol culture in politics has been pretty strong down the years as well.
Yeah.
So that's what I say about it being something of a laboratory of mental ill health.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, no, that's been very interesting, and thank you. Because I can't stop saying thank you so much for coming on. Do you mind if we finish with a quick fire round?
Go on then.
Okay, so question one: will Trump be the next president?
No.
Will Sunak be the next PM?
No.
Do you think Boris or maybe even Nigel Farage will be the new Tory leader if they lose?
No.
Do you think it's more likely for Burnley to survive the drop or Scotland to qualify from their group in the Euros?
I think it's more likely for Scotland to qualify.
It's not looking. When are you playing? Thursday.
We're playing Tottenham on Saturday.
Yeah, and if you lose that, that's it, isn't it? Game over.
If we lose that, that's it. And then if we win that, we've got to beat Forest, and we've got to hope that Luton. And we've got to hope they lose to Chelsea. We've got to hope that Luton don't do very well either.
I'd go with Scotland as well. I think
Scotland got a chance to qualify because in quite a few of the groups, 3 teams are going to go through.
Yeah, I think it's all bar 2 of the groups. Yeah, the top 3 will go through. So I would, yes, if I was a betting man, I think my money would be on Scotland as well.
Yeah, so one win, and it'd be great because the third game, I'm going to go to the game in Stuttgart. I think they're playing Hungary.
Oh, okay.
And that'd be great. That'd be a win
against
populism and Orban.
Absolutely. Are you a fan of VAR?
No. Well, I'm a fan of VAR in cricket and rugby league.
Okay.
Because they make it part of the spectacle.
Yeah.
What I cannot stand is when you have an incident. We had one recently where it took the guy. I mean, fair enough, we got a penalty out of it, but it took the referee. It took minutes of earpiece. Nobody knew what was going on. Then he eventually looked at the screen and he gave a penalty, and it was for something that you couldn't see when you were just in the crowd. You couldn't see it. Whereas what happens in rugby league and cricket is just like it's some of the replays. It's a work of art. Right, it's brilliant. But the rugby league, and to a lesser extent rugby union, you're seeing it and you're hearing it in real time. So it's part of the spectacle. No, VAR in football is just a joke.
Yeah, no, it does seem.
Added to which, we've had so many. We'd basically be qualifying for Champions League if it wasn't for bad referees. And
there's a slight exaggeration, but I know. What you mean.
Okay, a very big exaggeration.
Okay, am I right in saying you've been on The Apprentice?
Yeah, charity version.
Charity Apprentice, and you were on the show The Prime Minister. Make Me Prime Minister?
Make Me Prime Minister, yeah.
Have you been asked to do Strictly or I'm a Celebrity?
Both, many times.
And it's not something you'd
consider? I would never do them. I did Make Me Prime Minister because I thought it was a useful way of showing how hard politics is and how much it matters. And I did Comic Relief does The Apprentice because I fell victim to the charity card.
But no, I think doing not that I'm ever obviously going to be asked, but I think either Strictly or I'm a Celebrity would be, in terms of mental health, if nothing else, that would be awful. Why would anyone want to put themselves through that?
Yeah, although you talk to people who've done it, they say they absolutely love it, best time of their lives, etc. But no, I think from my perspective, I just think, I think you've got to watch your credibility in these things. And I know we live in a kind of, you mentioned Johnson earlier. Johnson is a sort of symbol of the kind of fusion of politics and entertainment. But it's really dangerous, and I hate it.
Just going back to that, you don't think he'll get back if hopefully if Sunak, I don't want to put my colours on a mast, but if Sunak does get defeated, you don't think Boris will? I don't know where they go from there.
Well, they'll probably go to the right. I think Farage long term is I think he's always had a sort of the idea of the Tories imploding, and he does a kind of reverse takeover. But I think that one of the reasons, if Labour win and if they win well, one of the reasons is that this whole sort of really right-wing populism is being rejected. So why would you go back to it?
Yeah.
And added to which, Johnson shouldn't, given the damage he's done to the country, both through the Brexit stuff and through the debasing of standards in public life when he was Prime Minister and so forth, Johnson shouldn't be allowed back. If they decide to go back down that route, they are done.
Mm-hmm.
They are done.
Mm-hmm. Well, let's hope they're done a little bit before then.
Exactly.
And finally, then going on to that, the final question: if you were in government, what one thing would you do you think, to improve mental health in this country?
I think if it was only one thing, it would be to build on this model of mental health hubs in schools and actually have them in workplaces as well. And I think the other thing I'd do is maybe we should all get trained in mental health first aid.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of this is about people looking after each other as well as expecting the state to pick up the pieces.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. Alistair, that has been
all right, mate.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much for being a good sport and giving up your time. And yeah, no, brilliant. Thanks ever so much.
Take care. All the best.
Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Let's start a podcast about our mental health for no good reason why. Let's call it fine.